You know, I used to think I had my life figured out. I'm 34, been married for 7 years, no kids, a decent job, and a small house in the suburbs. If you'd asked me 2 months ago who I was, I would have said something like, I'm a husband, a reliable guy, someone you can count on. But lately, I've been asking myself that question over and over again. Who am I? It started with little things. My wife, Julia, used to be glued to me. She'd text me in the middle of the day just to say she missed me. She'd plan little surprises, coffee in bed on weekends, random notes in my lunch bag. Then, out of nowhere, she became distant. No more morning kisses, no random, I love you texts. She started spending more time working late. And the weirdest part? She started keeping her phone face down on the table. I told myself I was being paranoid. I mean, we all go through phases, right? People change. Maybe she was just tired, maybe she was stressed. But one night, while she was showering, I heard her phone buzz. Just one message. One tiny sound that changed everything. It said, "Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again?" I froze. My chest tightened. I wanted to believe it was a joke or some spam message. But then I saw the name. It wasn't some stranger. It was Evan, my best friend since college. That's when I realized. I didn't know who I was anymore. A husband? A fool? Or just a man watching his entire identity crumble with one text message? I wish I could tell you I stayed calm, that I waited, thought things through, and approached it like an adult. But no. The second Julia came out of the shower, wrapped in her towel, humming like everything was fine, I just snapped. I threw her phone onto the bed and said, "You forgot to reply to Evan." The color drained from her face instantly. She froze, like a deer caught in headlights. Then, she tried to play dumb. "What are you talking about?" I laughed. That ugly, broken kind of laugh you hear in movies right before someone loses it. "Don't do that," I said. "Don't insult me." I saw the message. She sat down slowly, holding her towel tightly around her. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Just silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then, the excuses began. "It's not what you think," she said. "Oh really?" I snapped. "Because it looks like you've been sleeping with my best friend." She started crying. Those quiet tears that used to make me want to comfort her. But this time, they just made me angry. She said, "It only happened once. I swear. We were drunk, and it was a mistake." But her voice cracked, and I knew she was lying. My hands were shaking so bad I had to sit down. I couldn't even look at her. The woman I trusted more than anyone had just confirmed my worst fear, and somehow, it felt like my own skin didn't fit me anymore. And the crazy thing? The only thought running through my mind wasn't "Why did you do it?" It was "Why him?" After a few minutes of silence, she finally said something that made my blood run cold. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "You were working so much. I felt lonely. Evan was just there." That word, lonely, hit me like a punch to the gut. Lonely? We spent every evening together. We cooked, watched shows, took walks. Sure, I worked overtime sometimes, but it was for us. To pay off debts, to build a future. So I asked her, "And that justifies betraying me?" With him, she started to sob harder. "It wasn't planned. We were drinking after your birthday party. You went to bed early. We stayed up talking, and one thing led to another." I felt sick. My birthday. The night she told me she loved me and gave me a new watch. The night my best friend toasted to many more years of brotherhood. That same night, when I went to sleep, thinking I was surrounded by people who truly cared about me, they were betraying me downstairs. I got up, walked to the bathroom, and threw up. My body couldn't handle it. When I came back, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding her phone. "Please," she said, "don't tell him you know. He said he'd lose his job if his wife found out." I laughed again, hollow and bitter. "You're protecting him?" She started to say something, but I cut her off. "You don't understand what you've done, Julia. You didn't just cheat. You burned down the only 2 relationships that made my life make sense." She just stared at me, crying. But I wasn't even sure I was looking at her anymore. It was like she'd turned into someone else entirely. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I didn't even brush my teeth. I just sat there, staring at my phone, scrolling through old messages between me and Evan. Stupid memes, football banter, inside jokes that used to make me laugh. Every message felt like another knife in my back. Finally, I texted him. We need to talk. Now. He showed up about an hour later, still in his work clothes, holding a coffee like nothing had happened. When he saw my face, he froze. "Man, what's going on?" he asked. I didn't even bother with words. I threw his coffee out of his hand and shoved him against the wall. "You know exactly what's going on," I said. "You slept with my wife." His eyes went wide. For a second, I saw guilt flash across his face. Then came the lies. "Bro, she told me you guys were on a break," he said quickly. "A break? We'd never even had an argument big enough to consider a break. She said you were barely around," he continued. "That she didn't know if you still loved her." I just stared at him. "And you believe that? After everything we've been through?" He rubbed his face. "I messed up, man. I was drunk. She was crying." I punched the wall next to his head, hard enough to make my knuckles bleed. "Don't say that. Don't you dare say that like it's some stupid movie excuse." He didn't fight back. He just stood there, looking ashamed, but not ashamed enough to undo what he'd done. I told him to get out of my house, out of my life, out of my existence. He didn't argue. He just nodded and left quietly. But the moment the door shut, I felt this emptiness I can't even describe, because it wasn't just losing a wife or a friend. It was like losing my reflection. After Evan left, the house felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, felt louder than it should. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, and realized I hadn't eaten or slept properly in 2 days. My hands were still shaking. I looked down at my knuckles, red, scraped, a thin line of dried blood across my skin. But the real pain wasn't physical. It was this strange hollow ache in my chest, like someone had scooped out my insides and left just enough behind to keep me breathing. Julia tried calling. I didn't answer. She sent texts, long, emotional ones, saying she was sorry, that she wanted to explain more, that she still loved me. I didn't even open them. I just watched the notifications pile up until I turned off my phone completely. That night, I broke down. I won't pretend to be tough. I cried like a kid. I cried for the friend I lost, for the woman I thought I knew, and for the version of myself that believed loyalty was unbreakable. It's strange how betrayal messes with your sense of reality. You start replaying every memory, every conversation, trying to spot the moment it all began to rot. I thought back to the way Evan hugged her once, just a little too long, or the way she laughed harder at his jokes than mine. Things that seemed harmless at the time suddenly made perfect, horrible sense. And then came the hardest part, realizing that love doesn't just disappear. Even after everything, a part of me still wanted to believe she made a mistake, that we could fix it, that maybe I was strong enough to forgive. But another part of me, the part that couldn't unsee that message, knew I'd never look at her the same way again. About a week later, Julia showed up at the house unannounced. I was sitting on the porch, drinking cold coffee and staring at nothing. When I saw her car pull into the driveway, my stomach twisted. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Puffy eyes, messy hair, clothes that didn't match. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered why she looked that way. She walked up slowly, holding a small box in her hands. "Can we please talk?" she said softly. I didn't answer. I just motioned for her to sit. She opened the box. It had the watch she gave me on my birthday. "I can't look at this without feeling sick," she said. "I thought maybe you should have it back." Her voice cracked halfway through. I took the box but didn't look at her. She started talking fast, that nervous kind of rambling people do when they're desperate. I ended things with Evan. I told him we couldn't see each other again. I blocked him. "I'm getting therapy. I need you to know I regret everything." Her words felt like smoke. There, but impossible to hold. I finally said, "You didn't end it, Julia. You got caught." She looked up at me, tears forming again. "I still love you," she whispered. And for a brief, painful second, I almost said it back. Because deep down, some part of me still loved her too. But love wasn't enough anymore. Not after what she did. "I don't even know who you are," I said quietly. "And I don't think you know either." She started crying harder, begging me to forgive her, saying we could rebuild. But the thing about betrayal is, once it breaks, it doesn't just crack. It shatters. I told her she needed to leave. She hesitated, then nodded, whispering, "I'm sorry," one last time before walking to her car. As she drove away, I felt this strange calm. Not peace exactly, but the first quiet moment that didn't hurt as much as before. That night, after she left, I sat alone in the dark for hours. The house still smelled like her shampoo. Her shoes were still by the door. It was like living in a museum of what used to be my life. I stared at our wedding photo on the wall, her smiling, me looking at her like she was the whole world. I remember that day so clearly. How I thought I'd found my forever. How certain I was that we were different from everyone else. Now, looking at that same picture, all I could see was a lie. I poured myself a drink, the first one in a long time. I'm not usually the type to turn to alcohol, but that night I needed something to numb the noise in my head. At some point, I realized I had two choices. Try to fix a marriage built on betrayal. Walk away and start over, alone, but free. The first option scared me because it meant reliving the pain every day. The second scared me because it meant letting go of a huge part of my identity. But the truth? I couldn't build trust on ashes. So I made my decision. The next morning, I called a lawyer. My hands were shaking the whole time, but I knew it was the right move. I told him I wanted a divorce. Later that day, I packed her things, every sweater, every photo, every trace of her. I boxed it all up and left it by the door. It felt cruel, but it was the only way I could breathe again. When I texted her to let her know, she just replied, "I understand." That was the last message she ever sent me. And even though my heart felt like it was being ripped apart, a strange sense of relief followed. Like I'd finally stopped trying to save something that was already gone. The first week after filing for divorce was brutal. The silence in the house was deafening. Every creak, every empty chair reminded me of what used to be. I'd catch myself cooking too much food or turning to say something to her, only to realize there was no one there anymore. The nights were the worst. That's when the memories hit hardest. I'd lie awake replaying every moment. The way she used to laugh, the smell of her perfume, how she'd fall asleep with her head on my shoulder. Then my mind would flash to Evan, and it was like a knife twisting all over again. I deleted both their numbers, unfollowed them on social media, but it didn't stop the mental replays. Sometimes I'd dream about them, not even in some dramatic way, just normal scenes, like we were all still friends. I'd wake up with my chest tight, realizing none of it was real anymore. People always talk about anger after betrayal, but what surprised me most was the emptiness. It wasn't rage that consumed me. It was this numb kind of sadness that seeped into everything. A friend from work, Mark, noticed something was off and invited me to grab a beer. I almost said no, but something told me I needed to start being around people again. That night, I ended up telling him everything. He just listened quietly, then said, "Man, it's gonna hurt like hell for a while, but one day it won't." That stuck with me. When I got home that night, I threw out the last of her things. Her toothbrush, her favorite blanket, even the mug she always used for tea. It felt symbolic, small, but freeing. It was the first night I actually slept through till morning. About 3 weeks after I thought I'd finally started healing, I got a message that tore the scab right off. It was from an unknown number. The text said, "Hey, it's Evan. Please don't block me. I just need to explain." I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to delete it, but curiosity, or maybe masochism, got the better of me. So I opened it. He wrote this long paragraph about how sorry he was, how he'd been drinking a lot lately, how his own marriage was falling apart. He said he'd lost his job because his wife found out everything, and now he had nothing left. Then came the line that made my blood boil. "I know I messed up, but you were like a brother to me. I miss you, man." I actually laughed out loud. The kind of laugh that doesn't sound human, just empty. I typed out a response, then deleted it. Then typed another. Deleted that too. Finally, I sent one sentence. "You don't get to miss me after you destroyed my life." He didn't reply, but later that night, Julia texted me. Different number, same ache in my stomach. She said she'd heard from Evan's wife. Apparently he'd been spiraling since losing everything. She said she felt responsible. That word, responsible, hit me wrong. I realized she still hadn't accepted what she did. She wasn't sorry because she hurt me. She was sorry because of how messy it had become. And for the first time, I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. I blocked both numbers. No more explanations. No more guilt. Just silence. And for the first time in months, that silence didn't scare me. It actually felt peaceful. After blocking them both, it was like a switch flipped. The pain didn't vanish. Mark kept checking in, and eventually, he convinced me to join a group hike with some of his friends. At first, I was awkward. Half of me wanted to disappear back into my shell. But by the end of the day, I actually caught myself laughing. Genuinely laughing. That night, I got home, looked in the mirror, and realized I didn't look as broken anymore. Still tired, still healing, but human again. It was weird. I used to think my life ended the day I found that text. But maybe, in a strange way, that was the day it actually began again. About 2 months later, I was at a coffee shop downtown, trying to work on a project for my job. Headphones in, laptop open, avoiding eye contact with anyone. I felt fine. Not healed, but okay. Then I heard a familiar laugh. I looked up, and there she was, Julia. She wasn't looking at me, just ordering her coffee, but my heart skipped. My first instinct was to run, to hide, to pretend I didn't see her. But something in me stayed put. She looked different too. Tired, quiet, not the vibrant woman I married. When she noticed me looking, her eyes widened. I could almost see the panic behind them, like she realized she'd finally run into someone she couldn't manipulate. I packed up my laptop slowly, making a show of it. I didn't want her to think I'd freeze, or beg, or react. I wanted to prove to myself that I had moved past this. As I walked out, she called my name. My stomach clenched. I stopped. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she said softly. I messed everything up. I know that now. I wanted you to hear it from me. I looked at her, really looked, and for a moment, I felt the old pull, the love, the memories, the hope that maybe we could fix this. Then I remembered everything. The messages, the lies, the betrayal, the nights of crying on the couch. I heard you, I said quietly, and I accept it, but I don't forgive it. I'm building a life without you now. Her face fell, and I could see the realization hit. She didn't get to manipulate me anymore. Not today. Not ever. I walked away, and for the first time in months, my steps felt light. After that encounter, something inside me finally shifted. It wasn't sudden. I didn't feel like a new person overnight, but it was like a fog lifting one small breath at a time. I started setting boundaries, not just with others, but with myself. No more replaying old messages. No more imagining conversations that would never happen. No more holding on to pain like it was some twisted trophy. I even reconnected with hobbies I'd abandoned. I took a photography class, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. There's something about framing a moment, capturing light and shadow, that made me feel in control again. I also started journaling every night. At first, it was just venting. Anger, sadness, confusion. But soon, the entries became reflections. What I wanted from life, the kind of person I wanted to be, and the life I wanted to build. I didn't hate Julia anymore. I couldn't. Hate is exhausting, and I had enough energy just trying to survive myself. What I felt instead was clarity. I understood that she wasn't who I thought she was, and that's okay. People change, sometimes for the worse. That's life. And slowly, I started believing I could be okay, really okay, without her. One Saturday morning, I decided to take a long drive out of town. Nowhere specific, just to clear my head. I ended up at a small lakeside park I hadn't visited since college. The sun was low, casting golden light across the water. It was quiet, perfectly quiet. As I walked along the dock, I noticed someone sketching in a notebook. Curious, I peeked over their shoulder. To my surprise, it was a teenage girl drawing the lake. Focused, serene, completely in her own world. I smiled, and she looked up. "Hi," she said shyly. There was something about her calm, genuine demeanor that reminded me of who I used to be before all the chaos. I found myself talking to her, just small things at first. The lake, the light, the weather. And then, without realizing it, I was telling her about photography, about capturing moments that matter. It was strange. I didn't feel burdened. I didn't feel pain. I just felt present. Walking back to my car later, I realized something important. Life isn't about the people who betray you or the heartbreak you endure. It's about finding those rare, quiet moments where you feel alive again. And once you find them, you start to see that the world isn't entirely broken, just waiting for you to notice its beauty. Months passed, and I started feeling something I didn't think I would for a long time. Openness. Not to Julia, never to her, but to life. I joined a local photography club, started going on hikes with new friends, even volunteered at a community center teaching kids how to capture their surroundings. And slowly, I realized I could trust people again. It didn't happen all at once. Every time someone got close, I'd hesitate, feel that old pang of betrayal. But I learned to separate the past from the present. Not everyone is like Julia. Not every friend is like Evan. Then, unexpectedly, I met someone. Her name was Lena. Funny, sarcastic, a little chaotic, everything I wasn't expecting. We started spending time together, nothing rushed, just coffee, walks, and long conversations. I didn't know if it would last, and I didn't pressure it. But for the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection that wasn't tainted by lies or betrayal. It was liberating. I realized that love isn't ruined because someone else destroyed it. Love can still exist, in new people, in new experiences, in yourself. I could love again, carefully, thoughtfully, without losing myself. Looking back, I still can't believe everything that happened. Betrayal from the people I trusted most, my wife, my best friend, shook me to my core. It made me question who I was, what I deserved, and whether I could ever trust again. But here's what I've learned. Pain is temporary, growth is permanent. The heartbreak taught me to value myself more, to recognize red flags, and to never compromise my self-respect for someone else's mistakes. It taught me that forgiveness isn't always necessary, but peace is. You don't owe anyone who hurt you a second chance. You owe yourself a future. To anyone going through something similar, it's okay to grieve, to be angry, to cry. But don't let betrayal define you. Focus on rebuilding your routines, your hobbies, your friendships. Take small steps toward reclaiming your life. One day, you'll realize you're stronger than you ever thought. And one day, love, real love, honest love, will find its way back to you. As for me, I'm not the same man I was before. I'm better, wiser, stronger. And finally, I'm learning who I really am. Someone who survived the worst kind of heartbreak and came out alive.